Hello, my name is Tony Hunt. I'd like to welcome you to my time management seminar. This is in 4 sections, and I hope you enjoy them. I would like to make you a promise. It's a kind of a promise that if you implement 50 or 60% of the ideas that I will talk about in the next 4 sections, you will save yourself between 4 and 6 weeks of real time in the course of a year. And that sounds fantastic. And of course it could be, but for some of you that will just be the opportunity to do more work. But the truth is that most of us live our lives through habit. We do the same thing at about the same time every day, and we're not necessarily focused on that. This is the area that I'm going to be focusing upon. I'm going to be asking you to think about changing your habits, to become aware of when you're not using your time successfully and profitably, and to put in place alternative means of using that time better. And I'm going to do that in a number of different ways. I'm going to be looking at how we manage time itself. I'm going to be looking at how we manage other people's time. I'm going to be looking at how we delegate, how we use diaries. There's so many ideas. I think something like 100 or 200 ideas we'll be looking at. And therefore, out of these 100 or 200 ideas, I'm hoping that there will be some which will suit you and the kind of work that you do. If you drive to work, have you ever driven to work and then woken up when you get there? You're not even aware that you've been driving. You're on sort of automatic pilot. And sometimes if you're going out in the evening, maybe with a friend, and you're driving along the route that you normally take to work, and you keep on driving towards work, whereas you should have turned right or you should have turned left, that's because we do so much at a subconscious level, because our bodies are so complicated, so complex, that we cannot monitor absolutely everything we do all the time. This is quite dangerous, and I'm going to ask us to think about surfacing some of these habits, to decide whether or not these habits are right, and if so, keep them. But maybe to think about doing things differently. And I'm going to give you as many ideas as I possibly can to make things more effective. I said 4 to 6 weeks, but here's a fortnight. Here's 2 weeks already. Look, if you can save 15 minutes a day by the way in which you handle telephone calls, over the course of a year, you will save 2 working weeks. And you know, you can shave a minute off a telephone call by standing up and making that call, because you're so much more animated. The AT&T organization did a survey, and they reckon that every planned telephone call takes about 7 minutes on average. Every unplanned telephone call takes about 11 minutes on average. So you can save 4 minutes on those important telephone calls by planning them. So what I'm going to be asking you to do is not too complicated or too difficult. And can I also say it's not going to be too mechanistic? That worries me. I don't want you to live your life out of a diary. I don't want you to have to tick boxes and do things. What I'd like you to do is to feel comfortable about altering the habits in such a way that they can work well for you. I would like there to be, a holistic approach to this. The time that you save is time that you can benefit in the way in which you live your life. And I'm going to give you a couple of quotations in a moment or two to start things off, because in this first chapter, I'm going to be asking you to take control of the time in your life. In practical terms, so that you can be involved in what we are doing today, I'd like you to have a notebook and a pen handy. And I would like you to jot down, make a note of a list of things that you might do differently on your return to the workplace, things that you will be able to do differently. Try to collect, say, between 10 and 20 ideas in this section. There will be many to choose from. And as we look at the concept of prioritization, I'll be asking you to prioritize some of those and make them into an action plan. So you know that as we go through this section, one of the outcomes of it is for you to have a plan of action of things that you are going to do differently from today. I'd like to read you a poem. The clock is my dictator. I shall not rest. It makes me lie down only when exhausted. It leads me into deep depression. It hounds my soul. Even though I run frantically from task to task, I will never get it all done, for my ideal is with me. Deadlines and my need for approval, they drive me beyond the limits of my schedule. They anoint my head with migraines. My in-basket overflows. Surely fatigue and time pressure shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the hands of frustration forever. Well, I hope not. I really hope not. The line that concerns me particularly happens about a third of the way down that poem. It is this: even though I run frantically from task to task, I will never get it all done, and this is it, for my ideal is with me. What is your ideal? Are your standards so high that you can never meet them? Are you always going to fail? And if you are running frantically from task to task, can I ask you this question? Are you behaving like a butterfly? That is, you do a little bit of this task, and then you float over to do a little bit of this task, and then you float. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're doing that, what is happening is that all of this floating time is time that is wasted. We talk about multitasking, and we think that we can multitask. And some of us can. However, many of us waste time in between. I'll do that later. I'll put that off. I'll come back to that. And when I come back to it, I have to say to myself, now where was I? What was I doing? If, for example, I have my email switched on all the time, and I'm busy working at some task at my desk, and then a click comes up and says, ding, you have an email, and I stop what I'm doing, and I look at the screen, and I get disappointed yet again, I will then say to myself, where was I? What was I doing? And wind myself back up to speed with the previous task I was engaged in. This winding yourself back up to speed is called recovery time. That's the first type of time that I'm going to mention, but I'll be talking about others as well. Recovery time is the amount of time it takes to get back up to speed. If I do that 10, 20, 30, 50, how many times a day do you go into your email? If I do it 100 times a day, think of all the recovery time. Think of all the dead time that I am having to deal with. My thoughts are that you and I need to manage time because it makes us healthy. I firmly believe that there are two things that are necessary for you to be good at the work you do. And if you aspire to leadership or if you aspire to management, I do feel that you ought to have a strategic overview, absolutely fundamental, and you need to be able to manage your time. Why? Because when you become a manager, you will also be responsible for managing the time of other people. And if you cannot manage your own time, how can people respect you're trying to manage theirs? And there's a holistic dimension, which is best encapsulated in this short speech. This is a speech which was given by a former chief executive officer of Coca-Cola. It only takes 30 seconds, but it is an absolutely fantastic thing to help understand the holistic, whole life dimension of time management. Let me read it to you. Imagine life as a game in which you are juggling some 5 balls in the air. They are work, family, health, friends, and spirit. And you are keeping all of these in the air. You will soon understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. But the other 4 balls, family, health, friends, and spirit, are made of glass. If you drop one of these, they will be irrevocably scuffed, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered. They will never be the same. You must understand that and strive for it. Work efficiently during office hours and leave on time. Give the required time to family and friends, and have proper rest. Value has a value only if its value is valued. I think that is absolutely wonderful. It is exactly what I would like you to think about doing. How many of us have sacrificed our family, our friendships, for the job? How many of us have been unavailable because the job makes these demands upon us? Mr. Dyson is absolutely right in what he says. Work is a rubber ball, it will bounce. All the others are made of glass. Wouldn't it be a pity if at the age of 40 or 50 or 60, instead of having 5 balls, there was one rubber ball and one rubber ball only, and nothing else in your life? That's not good enough. So let me assist you here. Let us try and work towards making things better. A chap called C. Northcote Parkinson devised what he called Parkinson's Law. And there are a number of these different Parkinson's laws, and this is one that I'd like you to think about straight away. Work expands to fill available time and space. That is, if you have a meeting and there is nothing on the agenda, it will still take an hour. If you have set a meeting for an hour, because you'll find ways of filling the space. If somebody comes to you and asks for a filing cabinet or a new office, that filing cabinet or that new office will be absolutely full of stuff by the end of the week, because things fit. So the answer should be no, use the filing cabinet you've got more efficiently. We want to try to make sure that we don't become victims of Parkinson's Law. And why? Because time matters. It matters to you, it matters to me, it matters to those people who love you. It's a major resource that you learn to manage. It is what it is. There's no shortage of it, no increase of it. They're not making it again. If somebody says to you, can you give me 5 minutes of your time? Can I borrow you for a few minutes? Do you ever say, when are you going to give me that time back? They can't. They're not just borrowing 5 minutes of your time, they're borrowing 5 minutes of your life. And that 5 minutes will never be repaid. It can't be repaid. On top of that, poor time management, managing our time badly, equates to things like delay, stress, error, cost. It's expensive. So we have to conclude that time management is a personal development skill. And it is something that you can acquire. It is something you can work towards. It is something you can improve, and you should set yourself the target of managing your time effectively. In the UK, the Institute of Managers reported this. Ask yourself if it applies to you. 84% of us work in excess of official hours. 60% of us always work in excess of official hours. 50% of us take work home. 40% of us work weekends. And now with social media, the fact that you're taking your emails home with you, if you're going on a train, if you're going on a bus, sometimes, frankly, even if you're driving and you should not be doing this, messages, emails are still there with you. Lying on the beach, having your holiday, just checking in your emails. I'm sure you do that as well. In England, once upon a time, we used to have, I come from England, in England we used to have what we call holiday time. We used to take 2 weeks off, 4 weeks off for holidays. Now it's changed. We have leave. It's a different word. It's got a different connotation. And essentially it means that you have to be at work and in your mind, if not somewhere else. And then sometimes it takes you 5 days to get unstressed from the work that you're doing. But if you take your laptop with you, as most of us do, if you take your telephone with you, as all of us will, how can you escape from this work demand which is on you? And that creates stress, and stress is very dangerous in our lives. So the managerial work that we're engaged in consists of a number of different elements, the most important of which is its unrelenting pace. Everything needs to be done yesterday. We have brief, varied, fragmented work periods. 50 to 80% of us spent communicating. That's time that we have to communicate via different media. Most of us have a preference for live action, but we have to handle our emails, and we've got to handle our telephone calls, and we've got to handle the interruptions that we get. Just a thought. In my country, when I was a child and when I was a young man, I used to watch a program on the BBC which was called Tomorrow's World. And it told us about the future. And Tomorrow's World told me, a young man, that by the year 2000, that's 15 years ago, by the year 2000, you will probably work for about 3 or 4 hours a day, and the rest of your time will be leisure. Ha! The computer was coming along. The computer was going to take all this work from us and make our lives leisurely and relaxed. Of course, that hasn't happened, has it? Some of you are now doing the work of 20 or 30 or 40 other people because the computer enables you to do this. Most of us are actually doing more work than we did before. Ask yourself, is that right? Should I be handling that kind of pressure? And trying to raise a family, follow hobbies. Remember hobbies? People used to have them once upon a time. We need to try to get this holistic viewpoint to permit us to reclaim our time. Because the edges have been blurred. We don't just arrive at work and do our day and then finish. We arrive at work already thinking about stuff, answering emails. We go away from work, looking at that report, thinking about what we're going to do, getting telephone calls at 9 and 10 o'clock at night, and responding to them. So it becomes a 24/7 obligation on us. Do you have to do that? Is there an alternative way? So we ask ourselves, what am I trying to achieve? By that I mean, what am I trying to achieve in my life? Yes, I want to be successful. Yes, I want to show my commitment. Yes, I want to work very hard. Do I have to give every moment in my life to the work that I do? What are the things I have to give up? Woody Allen, American comedian but also film director, says this: you can live to be 100 if you give up all the things that make you want to live to be 100. I'm with him on this. I don't want to give them up. My family is vitally important to me. I've loved being a dad. I have 5 children and I've really enjoyed bringing them up. I love my work. I have got hobbies that I enjoy doing. And I travel extensively. I do the things that I want to do. I pay a price for it. But I'm hoping that I can share with you ideas that you will feel comfortable about implementing yourself to improve, so that you're not a victim of circumstances, but you are somebody who controls your life a little bit more effectively. For example, are you efficient or are you effective? Peter Drucker mentions this in his dictum. Efficiency is doing the job right. Effectiveness is doing the right job. Now, you could spend all day doing something very, very efficiently, but ask yourself, should I really be doing this? Is this the thing to be doing? Am I doing the right thing? There's a difference between doing the thing right and doing the right thing. And you and I should always be doing the right thing. And very often, doing the right thing involves getting somebody else to do it. Learning how to delegate it. Learning how to feel comfortable and not guilty about delegating it. And I'm going to look at delegation in some detail, but let's get the excuses out of the way first, shall we? I want to do the thing right, but I can't delegate because there's nobody to delegate to. I can't delegate because by the time I've taught you how to do it, I could have done it myself. So what's the point? I can't delegate because if I do delegate it to you and you get it wrong, I'm going to get into trouble. This is the one I like. I can't delegate because I am the only person in the world who can do this quite as well. And I actually believe that. Delegation is the number one tool of a great manager. It's the number one tool of somebody who manages his or her time effectively. That's doing it right. So, let's think about how we might. I want to introduce you to the SMART goal acronym because whenever you ask somebody to do something, unless you're very careful, it may possibly bounce back to you. To avoid it bouncing back to you with extra work attached to it, I would like you to delegate in a smart way. Be specific about what you ask somebody to do. Put in place measures of performance that person can understand and work towards. Agree the prime driver of whatever you're asking them to do. This is something taken from project management, and I will look at it later, but essentially it means that there are three main drivers to any task: the quality that you want from it, the amount of money it's going to cost, the amount of time it's going to take. And one of those three at any time is more important than the other two. Make sure that whomever you are delegating to understands what is the prime driver. Whatever you delegate to somebody should be realistic. It should be within their compass. It should not be impossible for them to achieve. And whether or not time is a prime driver, there ought to be some kind of time limit to any kind of tasking that is done. Easy to do. People respond to it very, very well. Try not to set yourself or other people things which are absolutely impossible. The novelist Graham Greene says that despair is the price one pays for setting oneself an impossible aim. Because, of course, if you do set yourself an impossible aim, you will always fail. You can't afford that because your sensitivity, the human condition, will start to tell you that you are a failure. And if you self-tell that you're a failure, you will become that failure. So don't set yourself impossible goals. Set yourself things which are challenging but achievable. Well, we need to ask ourselves, where am I starting from? I've mentioned habit already, and I think the first thing we should be doing in some kind of detail is looking at what I do every day. What do you do every day? Are you aware that you are doing it? I've watched officers get into action, for example, where somebody comes into work at about, say, 8 o'clock in the morning and maybe makes themselves a cup of coffee, maybe sits down and reads a newspaper and shuffles around, and then as they start thinking about their work, they move themselves up into some action, maybe from 8:45, maybe from 9 o'clock, but there's an hour wasted there. Some of these morning huddles can take an hour. I worked with a company in Saudi Arabia where the morning huddle took an hour. It took me 5 minutes to work out why. It was a canning factory. They were making cans in temperatures of 50 degrees. The room in which the huddle took place was air-conditioned. Of course you'd want to stay there, and you'd want to stay there for as long as you can. But it's not using time effectively. I would like you to be aware of what you are doing every day, and so therefore I'd like you to consider, just for a day or two, keeping a time log. Make one up yourself. This is one that an American company that I'm aware of has used. And it's really helpful. Down the left-hand side are times of the day in 15-minute incremental units. The actual activities that you engage in are the first things that you see over the heading. And right next to it, the business function would be your job description, things that your job description requires you to do. And to the right, you see something called a priority code that I will come to later on. What I'd like you to do just for 2 days is to mark any activity that you engage in and then put another mark against your job description element, whatever it is, so that there should be some kind of correlation between what you do and what you're supposed to do. And if you find that after keeping this log for a couple of days, there are lots of activities that you engage in which are not part of your job description at all, you might want to query this. At a great extreme, for example, somebody who works as an administrative assistant might occasionally, out of a favor, help somebody book a hotel, help somebody book a flight, maybe help somebody book a holiday. And then word of that gets round that this person does it particularly well, so he or she might find themselves becoming a travel agency for their colleagues, taking up more and more of their time. Remember that that person is going to be appraised on their job description, not on the extra work that he or she does. Not only that, they're still going to be expected to do their main workflow to acceptable standards. And it's quite easy to get things so out of kilter that it just becomes the way we do things. But in reality, we should look back and say, well, that's not what I should be doing. I should not be doing that. So there are a number of things I'd like you to think about it. Do it for at least one day, would you? There are certain time management programs that say do it for a fortnight, do it for a month. No, do it for one day. Maybe make a lot of blank forms, leave them everywhere, and just fill them in wherever you are. Tell people what you're doing and expect it is going to be difficult and it's going to be dull. You're not going to enjoy it. That's not the point. And then diary in some time for analysis before you start. Collect this information over a couple of days minimum. Ask yourself some questions. Why did I do this? Why did I do it then? Was there a better or a simpler way that I could have done it? For example, could I have delegated it? Could I have dumped it? Could I have delayed it? There are lots and lots of different options that are there. When you get back to work today, or when you go in tomorrow after thinking about this section of our seminar, choose 3 ideas out of that little list of ideas that I hope you've collected and prioritize them. 1, 2, 3, just 3 of them. And this is the big ask. This is really the thing to get you to change your habit, to shift a little bit. Send a copy of this action plan to your line manager. Ask that person to meet you at the end of a stipulated time, say a month, say 2 months, to discuss how well you've developed new skills. I suggest things like this. Ask yourself, am I efficient? Am I effective? Or am I both? And can I prove it? Tell yourself that you're now going to set goals more effectively. And can I ask you specifically to think about writing down 1, 2, or 3 goals that you are going to try to achieve over an agreed period of time that your line manager can discuss with you in the near future. Or the third suggestion I make is that you might want to take the time log and analyze better how you spend your time so that you can see how successfully or otherwise you are currently working and what changes you might need to effect to make things work better.